The Forbidden Encounter. Lena Thornton had long grown weary of the mundane confines of her research facility. It was situated on the outskirts of an abandoned Arctic base, shrouded by dense snowstorms that made every outside excursion a test of endurance. She had come here in search of meaning, of breakthroughs, but all she had found so far were cold winds and isolated nights. Her latest project, one that had consumed her for the past year, was an artifact found during an excavation in the Siberian wilderness. The object, shaped like an intricately designed crystal, was unlike anything human civilization had ever encountered. Lena had been brought in for her expertise in alien technologies, but as she dug deeper, the lines between science and madness began to blur. It was on one particularly bitter night when everything changed. The wind howled outside, shaking the walls of the facility as Lena pored over the strange markings etched onto the artifact. The glow it emitted was faint but unsettling, like a heartbeat echoing from another dimension. She had almost given up for the night when she heard it, a faint whisper that seemed to come from nowhere, a voice in her mind. "Release me, Lena." Startled, she dropped the crystal and stumbled back. Her heart raced as she looked around the empty room. The voice persisted, calling her name. Fear crept into her chest, but her curiosity drove her forward. She reached down, her hands trembling, and gently touched the crystal once more. The moment her fingers made contact, the room shifted. A sharp wind swept through the lab, rattling the windows and knocking over papers. The artifact began to glow brighter, until the light engulfed everything around her. Suddenly, a figure materialized in front of her, stepping out of the very air. He was tall, with dark, piercing eyes that seemed to pierce through the very fabric of reality. His features were human but unmistakably alien, a perfect blend of elegance and danger. He wore dark, flowing robes, and his presence filled the room with an intensity that sent Lena's pulse racing. "Who are you?" Lena whispered, her voice trembling. The figure regarded her with calm eyes, a slight smile curling at his lips. "I am Jorik Darius. I've come to warn you. Your world is on the brink of destruction." Lena's mind reeled. Her first instinct was to scream, but she forced herself to remain composed. "Destruction? What do you mean?" Jorik stepped closer, and as he did, the crystal on the table pulsed in response. "That artifact you found is not a mere relic. It is a key to something far more dangerous than you can imagine." Lena stared at the glowing crystal, her thoughts racing. Was this man truly an alien? And why was he telling her this? What was she supposed to do with this knowledge? "You must understand," Jorik continued, his voice steady but filled with an edge of urgency, "there are others who seek it, others who will use it to awaken a force beyond your control." "Who are these others?" Lena asked, her scientific mind already grappling with the enormity of the situation. "Enemies," Jorik answered darkly. "Enemies who have been watching your planet for centuries. And now they are coming for this artifact." Lena felt a shiver run down her spine. The implications of his words were staggering. She had always known that her research could have consequences, but she never imagined it would lead to something like this. She had to know more. "What is this force you're talking about? What will happen if they succeed?" Jorik's expression darkened. "The awakening of Zirithis, the alien queen. She has the power to conquer worlds, to bend civilizations to her will. If she is released, your world will fall." Lena's heart pounded in her chest. She couldn't allow this to happen. But what could she do? She was just one person, and even with the knowledge Jorik had shared, she didn't know where to begin. "I don't know if I can stop it," she admitted, her voice small despite the turmoil inside her. Jorik's eyes softened for a moment, and he reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You may not have to do it alone." The weight of his words hung in the air between them, but Lena wasn't sure she was ready to accept what he was offering. To trust him would mean stepping into a world of danger, of uncertainty. Yet, the pull of the unknown was irresistible. She had to know what was coming, and if there was even the slightest chance to stop it, she had to try. "I'll help you," she said, finally making up her mind. "But I need to understand everything. All of it." Jorik nodded solemnly. "I will explain what I can. But know this, Lena, the fate of your world rests in your hands." Whispers of the Void. Lena sat at her desk, staring at the intricate markings on the alien artifact, her mind a whirlwind of questions. She had barely slept since her encounter with Jorik. His words echoed in her ears, haunting her every thought. The fate of your world rests in your hands. She had always prided herself on being a rational scientist, driven by logic and discovery. But this was something entirely beyond the realm of science. The notion that her actions could influence the survival of humanity felt both overwhelming and strangely exhilarating. Jorik had promised to explain more about the artifact, but she could sense there was so much he wasn't saying. His urgency had been clear, but his manner was guarded, as if he feared revealing too much too soon. The part about the alien queen, Zirithis, was the most disturbing. Lena had heard myths about alien civilizations and cosmic rulers, but they had always been relegated to the pages of science fiction. To learn that such a being could exist, and that her power could reshape entire planets, was a terrifying thought. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. "Lena?" Jorik's voice came through, warm but filled with a quiet edge of concern. She stood quickly, moving toward the door and opening it to reveal him. His presence in her lab still felt otherworldly, like a phantom in a dream. Despite his human-like appearance, there was something in his eyes that spoke of far more ancient knowledge. "I've contacted someone who might help us understand more," Jorik said as he stepped into the room. "A man named Armand Vix. He was a soldier with the United Coalition. He has experience with extraterrestrial threats." Lena raised an eyebrow. "A soldier? Why would he help us?" Jorik's gaze hardened slightly, as though recalling something he didn't care to share. "Because he knows what's at stake. And because he has seen firsthand the horrors that alien forces can bring." Lena's gut twisted. She hadn't signed up for this, she was just trying to understand the artifact. But now it seemed her research had led her into the heart of something much darker than she ever expected. "When will we meet him?" she asked, already sensing that this meeting could change everything. "Tonight. I'll arrange the transport," Jorik replied. Later that evening, Lena found herself in a small, dimly lit room in the underground research complex. Jorik sat across from her, his usual composed demeanor replaced by something closer to urgency. They were waiting for Armand Vix, the former soldier who had been described as both enigmatic and deeply connected to the covert world of alien warfare. The door clicked open, and a man stepped inside. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in tactical gear. His face was marked with scars, his expression worn but intense. He looked like someone who had seen too much and survived against impossible odds. "Lena, this is Captain Armand Vix," Jorik introduced, his voice measured. "Armand, this is Lena Thornton." Lena offered a stiff handshake, but Armand didn't seem to notice. His eyes were immediately drawn to the artifact on the table, and his expression darkened. "Where did you find this?" Armand asked, his voice gravelly, as though the question itself held a deeper meaning. Lena felt the weight of his gaze and quickly explained the origins of the artifact, leaving out only the parts that felt too absurd to share, the alien encounter, the strange connection with Jorik. She wanted to trust him, but there was something about the soldier's demeanor that made her cautious. He was a man of few words, and she wasn't sure if she liked that. Armand nodded, seemingly satisfied with her explanation. "I've seen something like it before. Long ago." Lena's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" Armand's eyes narrowed, his gaze flicking from the artifact to Jorik, and then back to Lena. "I was part of a special forces unit designed to investigate alien threats. We came across something similar during an operation in the Amazon rainforest. The artifacts we found there had the same kind of energy readings, the same markings. But the mission went south, very quickly. Jorik leaned forward, his expression intense. What happened? Armand hesitated, the tension in the air thickening. We encountered an alien race, one far more advanced than us. They called themselves the Harki. They were searching for something, an artifact, a key. It was the same type of energy source we were tracking. We never found it, but we were told it was the key to awakening their queen. Lena's heart skipped a beat. This was what Jorik had been talking about, the key. Zirithis, Jorik said, his voice barely above a whisper. Armand nodded grimly. Yes. I've heard the name before. She's not just a queen, Lena. She's a weapon. A living weapon. Her awakening would signal the rise of a new empire, one that would destroy everything in its path. Lena felt the weight of his words settle like a stone in her stomach. They were talking about the end of humanity, about the potential for an alien invasion unlike anything Earth had ever seen. The thought of it was almost too much to process. How do we stop it? Lena asked, her voice tight with fear. We don't know yet, Armand replied. But I've been tracking these alien movements for years, and I believe the artifact is just the beginning. There are more of them. And they're coming for the last piece. If they get it, they'll awaken Zirithis, Lena finished for him, her voice filled with dread. Jorik stood and walked over to the artifact, his hand hovering over it. It's not just about stopping them. It's about understanding why they're here. Why they need to awaken her. Lena frowned. And you think you have answers? Jorik turned to face her, his eyes unreadable. I have pieces. But some pieces are buried in the past, buried in worlds that no longer exist. Lena was beginning to understand that the answers they sought might be hidden in the very history of the galaxy itself. But as the puzzle pieces fell into place, the more she felt the weight of the responsibility on her shoulders. And yet, there was still so much they didn't know. Still so much she didn't understand. The following days were a blur. Armand briefed Lena and Jorik on everything he knew about alien factions and their movements. He had a network of contacts, some of whom were former military allies, others deep within the intelligence community. Despite his rough exterior, it was clear that Armand was one of the few people who had witnessed the terrifying truth about extraterrestrial threats. But there was something else, a nagging feeling that Lena couldn't shake. The artifact, the energy readings, the mysterious whispers, it all felt like a trap. If the aliens had been hunting for this key for so long, why had it appeared now? And why had it chosen her? These questions kept her up at night, but she was too afraid to voice them aloud. She had to keep going. There was no turning back now. Lena was just beginning to process everything when a communication came through, an encrypted message, its contents brief but urgent. The Harki are on Earth. They're closer than you think. The Hidden Queen. Lena sat in the dimly lit room, the faint hum of the facility's power systems the only sound filling the tense silence. Her fingers drummed nervously against the tabletop, her mind racing over the events of the past few days. Armand had shared his knowledge of alien factions and their ongoing movements, but there was still something deeply unsettling about the whole situation. It wasn't just the impending threat of Zirithis and her awakening, it was the realization that everything Lena had known about the world, and about herself, was being rewritten. Have you managed to trace the signal? Lena asked, breaking the silence. Jorik stood at the far side of the room, his eyes fixed on the artifact. His gaze lingered on it as if it were a living being, perhaps it was. He hadn't said much since their last conversation, his silence adding to the weight of uncertainty that hung in the air. The last communication from Armand's contacts had hinted that the alien forces, the Harki, were not just searching for the artifact, they were already on Earth. They were coming for the final key, the one that would release Zirithis from her slumber. Yes, Jorik finally answered, his voice as calm as ever, though Lena could hear the strain behind it. We've pinpointed several locations where their presence has been detected. They are moving fast. And we're running out of time. Lena took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. The knowledge of an alien army on the move, the whispers of a queen who could bend the cosmos to her will, it was almost too much to bear. But she couldn't back down. Not now. The fate of Earth depended on it. Armand entered the room, his military demeanor unchanged, but his eyes betrayed the concern that lay beneath the surface. I've heard from my people. We need to move. Now. The artifact's energy readings are spiking. We don't know what that means, but it's not good. Lena glanced at the artifact, her mind racing. What does it mean? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. It means Zirithus is waking, Jorik said, his voice low and grave. The artifact is more than just a key. It's a conduit, a link to her. The moment it reaches its full potential, she will be able to communicate with us directly. And once that happens, there will be no stopping her. Lena's heart raced, and for a brief moment, she almost couldn't breathe. The thought of an alien queen awakening was terrifying enough, but the fact that she could communicate with them, that meant Zirithus would be aware of every move they made. They were running out of time to stop her, and yet, the more they uncovered, the more they seemed to be walking into the heart of an ancient, predestined war. Where do we go from here? Lena asked, her voice tinged with a sense of urgency. We need to find the last piece, Armand answered, his jaw set firmly. There's another artifact, something that can either amplify or cancel out the first one. It's hidden in a remote location, somewhere deep within the Amazon rainforest. We don't have a choice. If the Harki get to it first, they'll be able to summon Zirithus in full force. They'll control her. And the rest of us, will be nothing but pawns in their game. Lena's pulse quickened. But how do we even know where to look? This isn't like tracking down a lost relic. We're talking about a piece of alien technology. It could be anywhere. Jorik turned to her, his expression unreadable, yet there was a flicker of something, guilt, perhaps. The artifact you discovered, it's more than just a key to Zirithus. It's also a map. A guide to the final piece. The moment you activated it, you unknowingly began the search for the last artifact. I didn't want to tell you sooner, because I wasn't sure you were ready. Lena's mind spun as she processed his words. So much had happened in such a short period of time, and now it seemed she had been unwittingly pulled into something far bigger than she could have ever imagined. She was part of a cosmic game, a game where the stakes were no longer just about survival, but about control of the universe itself. We're being hunted, Lena whispered, her voice thick with the weight of the realization. The Harki are after us. And the moment they get their hands on that last piece, it's over. Armand nodded grimly. That's why we need to find it first. And we need to do it before they get to Zirithus. Lena's mind flashed to the images of the Harki she had seen in her research, alien beings with cold, predatory features. They were unlike anything she had ever imagined, creatures capable of unimaginable destruction. If they were truly after Zirithus, the consequences would be catastrophic. And there was something else that gnawed at her, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, this whole thing had been set in motion long before she had ever discovered the artifact. That perhaps the events unfolding were part of some grand design, a design she was helpless to avoid. I'll prepare the coordinates, Armand said, his voice cutting through Lena's thoughts. We leave in an hour. The journey to the Amazon rainforest was both arduous and nerve-wracking. Lena, Jorik, and Armand traveled under the cover of darkness, navigating through dense foliage and treacherous terrain. The air was thick with humidity, and the sound of distant creatures echoing through the jungle only added to the sense of unease that lingered over them. Despite the heat, Lena's skin felt cold, her nerves wound tight with every step they took deeper into the unknown. They finally arrived at an old, hidden temple, an ancient structure half swallowed by the jungle. Its stone walls were covered in moss, and its entrance was guarded by strange symbols. The place felt abandoned, lost to time, but as they approached, Lena could feel the presence of something ancient stirring in the air. The artifact she carried was pulsing softly, as if it were responding to the temple itself. "Is this it?" Lena asked, her voice a mixture of awe and fear. Jorik nodded. "This is where the final piece lies." The temple entrance was blocked by a heavy stone door, its surface engraved with symbols that seemed to shimmer in the moonlight. Lena stepped forward, her fingers brushing against the carvings. She could feel the faint hum of energy beneath her fingertips, the same energy she had felt when first encountering the artifact. This was it, the final piece of the puzzle. But just as Lena reached for the door, the air shifted. The temperature dropped, and a strange, otherworldly presence filled the air, as if something had awoken. A voice, deep and resonant, echoed through the temple's walls, sending a chill down Lena's spine. "You are too late." Lena froze, her heart skipping a beat. She turned to Jorik and Armand, both of whom had gone pale. They had been followed. The Harkii were here. A betrayal of flesh and blood. The temple's atmosphere had shifted, gone was the quiet of the jungle, replaced by an eerie silence that filled the air. Lena's breath caught in her throat as she spun around, eyes searching for the source of the deep, resonant voice that had spoken. The jungle around them seemed to hold its breath, as though even the natural world had paused in anticipation. Jorik's face hardened, his posture tense. He stepped between Lena and the shadows that had suddenly grown heavy, as if something dark was moving toward them. Armand had already begun to scan the area, his hand on the hilt of a weapon Lena had never seen before, sleek and alien, forged from materials that didn't belong to Earth. "I knew they would come," Jorik said quietly, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the entrance to the temple. "But not this quickly." Lena felt a chill run through her body. She had never been in a situation like this, where the line between ally and enemy was so blurry. The Harkii were here. They had followed them. But what did that voice mean? "You are too late for what?" Before she could voice her concern, the shadows near the temple's entrance shifted. Figures emerged, their outlines barely visible in the dim light. Then they stepped forward, revealing their features, tall, their skin a smooth shade of dark bronze, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. They were Harkii, the alien force that had been hunting the artifact and the key. And now, they were standing right in front of them. "Not just followers," Armand muttered, his eyes narrowing. "These are leaders. They're here for the Queen." Lena's breath hitched. If these were leaders, what were they capable of? And if they were here for Zirithis, it meant that the Queen was much closer to awakening than they had feared. "We have to get inside," Jorik said urgently. "The artifact, the final piece. It's the only thing that can stop her. We can't let them take it." The tension in the air was suffocating. Lena's mind raced, trying to piece together everything she knew. The artifact, the key, the map, it was all pointing to one thing, Zirithis, the alien queen. And now they were facing a group of Harkii leaders who were determined to awaken her. As the leaders of the Harkii stepped closer, Lena felt a flicker of recognition. She could see it in their eyes, familiar, yet alien. One of them, in particular, caught her attention. He was different from the others, his movements more deliberate, his gaze piercing. He stepped forward, his presence commanding the others to halt. "Jorik Darius," the leader said in a voice that sent a chill down Lena's spine. "I did not expect you to betray your own kind." Lena's breath caught in her throat. "Betrayal?" Jorik stiffened, his face hardening. "I have not betrayed anyone," he said through gritted teeth. "I am here to stop you from awakening Zirithis. She is not to be released." The leader's lips curled into a slight, mocking smile. "You misunderstand, Jorik. The time for stopping her is long past. She is the ruler of the Harkii. She will bring forth the reign we have awaited for eons." Lena felt the weight of his words. This was no longer just about an alien queen or an artifact. This was about a war that had been brewing for centuries, a conflict that had shaped the fate of entire civilizations, and now Earth was caught in the middle. But something about the leader's words didn't sit right with Lena. There was something familiar about his gaze, something that tugged at the edges of her memory. She had seen those eyes before. "Wait," she said, her voice trembling but determined. "I've seen you. I know you." The leader's eyes flickered, a brief moment of recognition crossing his features. He tilted his head, studying her closely. "You remember me, human? That's unexpected." Lena took a step back, her mind racing to understand. "I've seen you in my research. You were at the site of the Amazon excavation. You were part of the Harkey mission." He smiled, a dark, predatory grin. "Yes, Lena Thornton. I was there. I watched you. I've been watching you ever since. And now, it seems, you are playing a much more important role than I could have ever imagined." Lena's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" she demanded, her voice rising with urgency. "What role am I playing?" The leader's smile widened, though his eyes remained cold. "You are not just a scientist. You are the key to the final piece. You were chosen to find it. To awaken her." A surge of cold realization washed over Lena. It was not just the artifact that had drawn her in, it was her. She had been chosen by the Harkey. But why? What had she become a part of, without even realizing it? Jorik moved quickly, stepping in front of Lena. "No. She is not part of your plan." The leader's gaze shifted to Jorik, his expression a mixture of disdain and amusement. "You think you can stop us, Jorik? You are a traitor to your people. And Lena, she is simply a pawn in a much greater game. A game you have already lost." Before Lena could react, a sharp, familiar voice interrupted the standoff. "That's enough." Armand stepped forward, his weapon raised, a steely resolve in his eyes. The other Harkey leaders tensed, their gazes shifting to him, but they did not move. Armand's stance was confident, but there was a quiet tension in his movements that betrayed how high the stakes had become. "Armand," Jorik warned quietly, his hand almost imperceptibly reaching toward him. "You don't know who you're dealing with. They want the Queen to rise. If we don't stop them, we don't have much of a choice." "Jorik," Armand interrupted. "We're outnumbered." Lena's pulse raced as the Harkey leader laughed softly. "Outnumbered? You still don't understand, do you, Armand Vix? The battle is already over. You lost before you even knew you were in it." It was then that Lena realized the truth of his words. It was not just about defeating them in combat. It was about something far deeper, something she wasn't prepared for. And as she looked into the eyes of the leader, the same alien presence that haunted her mind now seemed to rise within her. The betrayal was not just from Jorik, it was within herself. She had been drawn into this web by forces she hadn't understood, and now, she was at the center of it all. "Lena," Jorik said, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "You don't have to do this." But Lena was already beginning to understand what she had to do. She had to make a choice. And it wasn't just about Earth anymore, it was about her own fate. "I'm sorry," she whispered, looking into the eyes of the leader. In that moment, everything changed. Lena knew there was no turning back now. The Queen's awakening. Lena stood at the heart of the ancient temple, her mind reeling. The leader of the Harkey, whose name was Rakoth, stood just a few feet away, his piercing eyes never leaving her. The weight of his gaze felt like an invisible force pushing down on her chest, squeezing the breath out of her. The artifact hummed softly in her hands, its energy pulsing with an almost rhythmic precision. It was calling to her, urging her forward, urging her to fulfill the destiny she had been blind to until now. The words of the Harkey leader echoed in her ears. "You were chosen to awaken Zerithis, Lena Thornton. You are the key. It is your bloodline that holds the power to unlock her full potential." The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. She wasn't just some innocent scientist caught in the middle of an alien war. She had been groomed for this, her lineage connected to something far older, far darker than she could have ever imagined. She wasn't just studying ancient artifacts, she was the descendant of a race that had once served the very beings now seeking to reclaim their queen. "She's one of us," Rakoth had said with an unsettling grin. "She just doesn't know it yet." Lena's stomach churned. How could this be happening? She had spent her life studying science, seeking the answers to mysteries of the universe. She had never asked for this, never wanted to be caught up in this war between the Harkii and the forces seeking to stop them. And yet, now the fate of her world seemed to rest squarely on her shoulders. Behind her, Jorik and Armand stood tense, their faces filled with a mixture of disbelief and anger. Armand's weapon was still raised, but there was a nervousness in his posture that suggested he knew they were running out of time. "Lena, don't listen to him," Jorik said urgently, his voice full of raw emotion. "This is not your path. You don't have to do this. You're not a tool for their agenda." But the words felt distant to her now. Something was pulling her toward Rakoth, toward the Harkii, and more disturbingly, toward the artifact in her hands. It was as though a force greater than her own will was taking control of her body, steering her toward a fate she could not yet fully comprehend. I don't know what to do," Lena whispered, her voice trembling. She felt like she was standing on the edge of an abyss, her heart racing as she fought against the overwhelming pull to give in. Rakoth stepped closer, his movements smooth and calculated. "You know what you must do, Lena. The artifact calls to you. Zirithis is ready to rise. Your connection to her is stronger than you realize." Lena shook her head, trying to fight the invisible force that tugged at her. "No. I can't. I won't help you awaken her. But before she could finish, a violent tremor shook the ground beneath them. The ancient stone walls of the temple groaned, and a deep rumbling sound filled the air. The artifact in her hands pulsed with blinding light, the energy surging like a tide crashing against the shore. The ground cracked open, and a blinding flash of light erupted from the center of the temple. Lena screamed, the pain in her chest intensifying as the artifact's power coursed through her veins. It was as if every fiber of her being was being torn apart and rebuilt in an instant, her body caught between two forces, the one calling her to awaken the queen, and the other, the remnants of her humanity, pleading for her to resist. "Lena, stop!" Jorik cried, but his voice was lost in the chaos. The very fabric of the temple seemed to come alive, the walls and the floor shifting as though they were made of liquid stone. The light from the artifact grew brighter, blinding her, drowning her in its power. And then, from the heart of the temple, came a voice. A voice so powerful, so overwhelming, that it seemed to shake the very foundation of reality. "Lena Thornton. You have awakened me." The voice was both familiar and alien, soft yet commanding, filled with an ancient, almost otherworldly wisdom. It was the voice of Zirithis, the alien queen. Lena's mind spun, caught between fear and an inexplicable sense of connection to the being whose voice now filled her thoughts. She had heard the stories, the legends. The queen was a living weapon, a being who could bend the universe to her will. And yet, there was something strangely comforting about her voice. Almost as though it were speaking directly to Lena's soul. "Do not fear me, Lena," Zirithis' voice continued. "I am not your enemy. I am your destiny. You and I are connected. You are the one who will lead my people to greatness once more." Lena felt the walls of her mind shatter as the queen's power reached deeper into her. She saw visions, terrifying visions, of a galaxy torn apart by war, of worlds rising and falling beneath Zirithis' rule. Her power was vast, infinite, and Lena could feel it surging through her, awakening something ancient and primal within her. But there was something else, a flicker of doubt, a voice in the back of her mind that screamed to resist. "No," Lena gasped, her body trembling with the effort to push back against the queen's influence. "I won't help you. I won't let you destroy everything." But Zirithis' voice only grew louder, more insistent. "You cannot escape your fate, Lena. The artifact has chosen you. You are the key to my awakening, and through you, I will rule once again. You are mine. Lena's vision blurred as the artifact in her hands pulsed with blinding light. She could feel her strength waning, her resistance slipping. Her grip on reality began to falter, and she feared she would lose herself completely. But then, just as she thought she would succumb to Zirithus' will, a burst of energy erupted from behind her. Armand fired his weapon, a precise blast that struck the artifact from Lena's hands, sending it tumbling to the ground with a deafening crash. The sudden release of energy disrupted the flow of power, and the overwhelming presence of Zirithus faltered for a brief moment. Lena gasped for breath, her vision clearing. The light from the artifact dimmed, and the powerful voice of the Queen faded into the background. Jorik rushed to her side, his hands gripping her shoulders with a sense of urgency. Lena, you have to fight her. You can't let her control you. Lena shook her head, her body trembling with exhaustion. I don't know if I can. She's too strong. Armand was already moving, stepping toward the artifact and preparing another shot, this time aimed directly at the heart of the glowing relic. We need to destroy it. Now. No. Lena cried, her voice breaking. If we destroy it, Zirithus will wake up fully. We can't let her rise again. We need to find another way. There has to be another way. Jorik looked at Lena, his face filled with a mixture of regret and determination. There's only one way, Lena. We have to destroy the artifact, or the Queen will be unstoppable. But Lena, exhausted and torn, took a deep breath. The Queen's influence was still there, lurking beneath the surface of her thoughts, but she wasn't ready to give up just yet. She couldn't. This isn't over, she whispered, her voice filled with quiet resolve. I'll find a way to stop this. But Lena knew that the war between Zirithus and the forces of Earth was only just beginning. The Queen's awakening had been set into motion, and now the real battle for control of the universe was about to unfold. And Lena Thornton was at the center of it all.